Alright folks, you're going to have to forgive me. Something happened with the camera and I ended up having to actually stop the video. Hopefully I can merge these two videos. I'm not very good with editing and that's why my videos are done the way they are. So hopefully I can merge the two videos if I can remember how I've done it before. But either way, so what we need to do next is put our zipper together. This is a number 5 nylon zipper. I really like the nylon ones. They're easy to zip up, and I like them. I like the classic look of like the ones with the brass teeth and stuff like that. But for ease of use, these nylon ones are pretty awesome. And I'm currently out of the ones with the brass teeth. So to put this together, you need to offset the two sides by about 1/4 inch or so. All right, so one side needs to be up a little higher. And the higher side, you'll put your zipper stop on, or your zipper slide on, and then you'll put it over there on the other side. Kind of push them in together, and the tricky part is holding it all while you try to zip it up. Sometimes I can get this instantly, and sometimes it takes me a minute. Looks like it might be a takes me a minute kind of day. There we go. All right, now, but on this one, I want to put two zipper slides going opposite directions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip it almost all the way to the end, and then I'm just going to put another one on going the other direction. Okay, so once again I'll put it on the high side, and then I'll put it on the low side, and I will try to zip it up. And the tricky part with doing the zippers like this is making sure that there's not a big bubble on one side versus the other, because there's too much zipper. Okay, and here's exactly, okay, I'm going to have to redo this one. See how up here on the top it kind of bubbles up really good, but then on the bottom it's kind of straight. I can do better. So I'm probably just like one tooth off. So I'm going to back it up and take the zipper slide off of it, and then I'll just try again. And hopefully the next time I'll get it a little better. Same bubble. Sometimes it does take a minute. Sometimes it doesn't. All right, now we're good. And the bubble on the bottom and the top is even. There will always be a little bit of a bubble because both these are, pushing the zipper separate. But as long as they push together just fine and everything, then you're going to be okay. And like I said, the bubble on those is even. So what I'm going to do is I'll move both the slides to the center of the zipper. Okay. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my double-sided tape, and I'm going to stick that zipper into underneath the leather. All right. So to do that, here's my double-sided tape. You may notice I'm also wearing a different shirt. We got super duper busy yesterday in the store, so I did not get to finish the video. So, new day. So I'm just putting double-sided tape right along the edges of the zipper opening here. Okay, and I'm extending it out just a tiny bit. Some craziness just popped up on my computer and I can't see what's on. There we go. I'm extending it out just a little bit past because we want it to kind of hold down the ends of the zipper once we're done sewing it in. So a little bit of a fleshy area on this leather where I probably got into a leg or belly area when I was cutting it. All right, so I will pull the backings off my zipper or my double-sided tape. Stretch my zipper out nice and straight, and line the zipper pulls. Just press them out a little bit so that they're not trying to get up under your tape. And I'm going to lay this down here as evenly as I can, And like I've said in all the zipper videos, make sure that your zipper is not going back and forth and back and forth, you know, being close to the top or the bottom of the leather. Try to keep it to where it's in a nice straight line, and your project will look a lot nicer once it's finished. All right. So that looks real nice. We're going to go over to the sewing machine and we'll sew in this zipper. And then the next thing we need to do is some skiving, because we're already to the point of pretty much final assembly. This is really not a difficult or even time-consuming project. I bet someone could easily make one of these in less than an hour. So yeah, give me a minute. I gotta set up the sewing machine because I know that we changed the color of thread from black to another color, and I want to go with black on this one. Alright, so here we are at our Class 26 sewing machine, and again, this is a lightweight cylinder arm machine, perfect for this this kind of project. So yeah, we're gonna get started sewing this zipper on here. One of the things I failed to mention when I'm talking about using sewing machines on videos, this machine, with how it's how this presser foot's over here on the left side of the center foot. Well, when you're doing your sewing, that should be on the bulk of your project. Because if we were trying to sew right here along the other edge of our zipper here, we have a real high probability as we're trying to get really close to that edge of that presser foot falling off the leather. And a lot of the time, if you look at some people's projects that they've made and you see where their stitching looks good, and then all of a sudden it jumps over and basically falls off, or moves over 1/8 of an inch, that's exactly what happened. They didn't put the bulk of their material out here. They tried to put the bulk of their material in here. And that's not how these machines are designed when you're using the left toe presser foot. They do make right toe presser foot feet and center feet for these, but you'll find that 99% of the time all you ever need is this left one, and it's perfect. So that being said, we've got it placed in here. I'm just going to line the inside of this foot up with my edge of my leather there, and we're just going to run it through here. I will be careful when I get up to where the zipper pulls are. I'll actually move them past where I've already sewn, just so that I don't sew that little bubble that we talked about into the leather. Okay, so we'll move that one, and we'll move that one, and now we'll just keep on trucking down the line until we get to the end. And when I'm on the other side, I'm going to do the exact same thing, and I'm going to bring that zipper back this way so that I don't sew that little bubble in the tape into the zipper. Hopefully that makes sense. Alright, I'm going to do a little bit of magic with my hand wheel here, getting across the zipper on the end. With these nylon zippers, I don't have to worry about it so much, but if I'm using the brass tape zipper, or the brass teeth zippers especially, you have to worry about breaking a needle. So you should use your hand wheel and slowly go across those so that the needle can work its way in between the teeth of the zipper. Otherwise, I mean, you're just going to power that needle right into a zipper. You're going to either break a needle bar, or knock the machine out of time. Or just get really lucky, but I don't get lucky, so therefore, yeah, those are what's going to happen. Alright, I'm back to the zippers, so I'm going to run them past where I've already sewn so that I can keep on going. Alright, and I'm toward the end again where I'm going to have to go up over my zipper. So again, I'm going to use my hand wheel and my presser foot together so that I can walk these stitches right up over the, and there it went, broke a needle. So it's still possible even with the this zipper to break a needle. I'm going to pause this while I change out this needle and get my extra piece of needle out of the machine so it doesn't damage anything, and we'll be right back and finish our stitch. Alright, got the machine reset, got a new needle in it. I pulled the extra piece of needle out of the bottom of it just to make sure it doesn't get caught up in anything. And it always stinks to break a needle, but it really stinks when you only had like 5 stitches left. So, alright, so what we're going to do is just like in hand sewing, if we were going to splice a thread, is we're going to go back 2 or 3 stitches, start there, and start working our way back around again. So, I'm going to hold these 2 threads and use my presser foot to get my and my hand wheel to get my needle exactly where I need it to go into one of those old holes there. There we go. Alright, now I'll go back to what I was starting to do a while ago, which is using the hand wheel and getting this thing across the zipper, hopefully with my needle still intact this time. Alright, we'll pass the zipper, so I'm just going to sew up these last couple of stitches here and get it back into my starting position. Put it back in that first hole so I can do my overstitch. There we go. And then I went over 3 stitches to lock it all in, and we're good. After I cut all these threads down and everything, you'll never even know I had to splice it. Alright, so next we've got to do a little bit of skiving. So I'm going to move the camera again, and we will be, I'll move the skiving machine over to where I need to be. We're going to do some skiving, and then we're going to have to start clipping this thing together to see where to sew it all together. So, we'll be back. Alright, so I got my MP4 set up to skive all my edges, and but first I need to clip off the ends of the zipper. Alright, so I'm just going to take, and I want to cleanly and squarely cut them off about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch beyond where they were sewn down. Okay, and we'll do that on both ends. Alright, now we are going to start skiving, and we're going to skive both the long ends of the main body piece. Alright, and we will skive all 4 sides of the top and bottom piece. But we're not going to skive yet the short ends of the main body piece, because until we clip it up and see where these need to be, we're going to actually do we'll trim them, and we're going to do a French seam on that, also called an upholsterer seam, so that it looks like that, because it's just kind of pretty and unique. So I've got this skive set up. It's about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch into the leather, and it's skiving about half the thickness of my leather. Making sure not to accidentally hit my zippers under the skiver there. I actually did a terrible job keeping that thing straight. There we go. Alright. So there we go. There's the ends of that skived. Now again, I'm going to do the top and the bottom piece. And I am going to tighten that skive down just a tiny bit. I'm reach in there and grab some of my scrap out. Alright. Pretty hard rounded curve to go around right there, so I'll probably just do 4 sides individually. There we go. When using one of these skiving machines, if you are just starting out and nothing's skived yet, you can just set the edge of it under the presser foot and go. But when I move on to the next side, where this piece has already been skived right here, it's best to use the presser foot and get that on top of the blade. Otherwise, there's a really good chance it could get sucked underneath the blade. Now, the other thing I'll tell you though is if you go counterclockwise, now you've got an area that's not skived yet. And you can do it that way until you get to your last side, and then you can't help it. So, there's all that skiving. Now we'll be back at the gluing bench, and we will clip this thing together and figure out where we have to trim it down. Alright, back on the gluing bench. Just like any other bag we've made, when we go to put this thing together or clip it or assemble it, we need to find our centers, because we always work from the center out. Alright, this is not long, or this is too long for my centering ruler, so I'm just going to go ahead and go, let's say 5 inches in from each side, and then I'll just pretend like those are the edges when I go to center everything. So, there's my center on this piece on the top, and I also have to do it on the bottom. So alright, so I have my centers marked on this piece. Now I need to mark them on the long ends of these pieces. Alright, all my centers are marked. I don't need to clip up the entire thing, and top and bottom. I just need to clip up one side of it. And I'm going to do the bottom. I'll grab me a handful of clips here. Again, I'm using binder clips. You can use those fancy little sewing clips. They're very nice too. But these are easier for my big old chunky fingers to grab when I'm not doing little bitty delicate work. So I'm just going to line up the centers that I've found here and put a clip on it. I'll go a couple of inches and clip it again and work my way around, kind of stretch it around that corner just a little bit. Keep on clipping. When we get to the back here, it looks like it's going to line up pretty well to not have to do a lot of trimming, just a little bit. So that'll be good. That'll make things easy. The French seam is really fun, and like I said, I think it looks really nice, especially if you're using a contrasting stitch color, which we're really not on this project, but that's okay too. Alright, so I've gotten almost to the center mark with my clips right there. So now I'm just going to go around the other side so that they can meet up. That one's gone forever. We'll never see it again. Okay. So I was at the Rockler woodworking store the other day, and I met a really nice lady. I believe her name was Shay, and apparently she watches a lot of my videos, and she was very impressed to get to meet me at such an arbitrary place like, you know, the woodworking store. But anyway, it was really neat because she just couldn't believe that, oh, there I was. Yeah, I like woodwork. But anyway, really nice lady. Alright, we're almost done clipping this sucker up. And it looks like we've done a really good job of balancing it out. It looks like we have just as much overlap past center right here as we do right here. So that's good. That means everything's lining up like it ought to. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that center mark on the bottoms of both of these. Okay. This would be easier if I had my Sharpie, but it's not sitting where it was yesterday, so. Okay, now we have to unclip it all. It's always the worst part. You go to clip one of these together just to tear it apart. And we're not going to forget, folks, when we go to sew this top on, we got to add our little handle. Alright, and there's a billion different ways to make the little handle. We may come up with a fun and inventive way for this one. I was going to use some russet tooling leather, but maybe we'll do something crazy. Who knows? Okay, so what I need to do is I need to make sure that these are nice and straight against each other, and we're going to sew where those marks are straight down it. Alright? But first I have to skive that, because after I sew those two together I'm going to fold it back and then sew it down again, and that's what makes the French seam with the I can't find my sample. I bet it's behind where I set the computer. So once we sew that middle line right there, that's when we're going to fold everything back and then sew these two end lines or side lines, and that's what makes the upholsterer seam or the French seam so pretty. I'm not going to lie, the car that I drive, I specifically chose the exact model and color that I did because I really like the stitching in the seats. That being said, I do like the model of car, don't get me wrong, when I was doing all my research on which one I wanted. So we need to skive that down first, and our skive needs to go just beyond where that line is. So I'm going to mark that right quick, even though the skive's going to take it away. But I need to mark it so I can set up my presser foot on my skiver. Alright, and I'm just kind of eyeballing this because I'm pretty good at doing a parallel line, but if you have to measure it, by all means, please measure it, and that way you've got some accuracy going on. Now, I set this up to where this will be real easy. Turn that sucker around, and there's the skiver right there. So, what I have to do is, I need the end of the presser foot to be just beyond that line. So that means I have to move my guide back just a little bit. Alright, should be pretty good. Perfect, it just went right out to that line, just exactly where I needed it. Let's do the other side. Good one again. Alright, so we're going to clip that up. Again, we're going to sew right along that line right there. And then I'll use double-sided tape to fold those sides down, and we'll sew it again. But first I have to clip it up. And again, I can't tape this seam. I have to clip it because we're going to have to fold the remainder, the excess over here, we're going to have to fold it back and sew it again. So that's why I'm not using tape or glue to hold this together before I sew it. Alright. So, give me a second. I'm going to I'm not gonna move the camera over to the machine for this little stitch line. Okay. Again, I'm just gonna sew from here to down here. That's it. So I'll be right back. All right. So we put that stitch line just right up against that skive. I mean, just right up on it. Okay. So cut my threads here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some double-sided tape and put it on the back ends, or the ends that I'm going to end up folding over here. And then this will help too. I'm going to flatten this part out. Okay, you might even want to turn it right side out just so that you can flatten it out a little bit and stretch it some and get it right where you want it so it'll lay flat once we sew it again. Okay. Probably shouldn't use such a dark leather on this video because it just doesn't show up compared to my ghost white hands. Alright, I will keep that in mind for the next one. Okay, so double-sided tape, the length of that, and we'll just put it right out here on the edge. It doesn't have to be exactly on the edge or anything, but it is. That piece of leather will be folded back and stuck to itself. All right, so I'll take the backing off my tape. I'll fold this back pretty hard against itself. Right up to the stitch. I mean, you want to pull it up against that stitch. And then I'll do the exact same thing over here. Again, you're going to pull it right up to the stitch. And that's what you're looking at right there. Okay, it looks like a folded and rolled stitch because it basically is. But now we're going to turn it right side out. Okay. We'll turn it right side out and we'll kind of flatten her down with our fingers, make sure everything's good. And now I'll meet you back over at the sewing machine again. Alright folks, so what we have here now is a round piece of leather that we have to get through the sewing machine. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit difficult. Not much. This one's big enough and flexible enough that it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But when I sew this, I'm going to put that presser foot basically right on that seam and walk it up, and I'm just going to let the back end of this just kind of fold up this way as I do it. Okay, so here we go. I am going to do a back stitch and everything on this seam. Now this seam is going up the back end of a bag, so it's not going to have like pressure on it or anything like this. Versus if this was going around a bag horizontally, you might end up sewing another thin piece of leather behind this on both sides to basically give it more strength, because then if that center seam ever busts, then your bag's going to fall apart because there'd be a lot of pressure on it. This one I'm not as worried about. It's not going to have any pressure on it, so it's not going to have that issue. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to go backward a couple of stitches, and then we'll just rock it forward. And again, I'm just, to keep my spacing, I'm keeping my presser foot right there on that seam, and yeah, it'll go straight because that's a straight seam. And you can see how, like I said, it's just kind of folding up right here for me, and it's out of my way, it's out of the camera's way. Like it's actually doing pretty good. If this was a really deep thing, then we might have more issues, but since it's only like 8 inches tall or whatever, we don't really have as many issues. Alright, I'm at the end, so now I'm going to back stitch. There we go. Now, I will pull it out and clip the thread and do the exact same thing on the other side. Alright. So again, I'm going to use the center seam as my my presser foot guide there. We'll start out backwards, go just a couple of stitches, and then we'll run it forward. Okay, that's done. And we've pulled it off the machine, and there's our French seam, also called an upholsterer seam. This is one thing you have to worry about with any of these printed leathers and stuff. If you notice, the leather's much darker over here than it is over here. So those don't really butt up too well. Luckily this is on the back side of the bag, and luckily this isn't particularly for anybody, because that would be bad. So here we go. We're going to go back to the gluing table. Alright, we're going to take a quick intermission from that, and we're going to work on the handle a little bit. We've got this strap piece here that I miscut earlier. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut me off a piece. I'm going to make it about 2.5 inches longer than the width of the project. Alright, so that way I know it's plenty long for what I need. And then this ruler's 2 inches wide, and I'm going to go ahead and bring it out to where it's just almost 3 inches. I mean, I don't need to measure it, but it looks about 3 inches to me. And then I'm going to throw my knife on the floor. Luckily it was still closed, so I didn't ding up my blade. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I've already put the skiving machine back over where it belongs, but I'm going to go through here and I'm going to skive off the outside 2/3 of the long ends here. Alright, and then I'm going to fold them over like so, and then I'll take this nice little piece of russet veg tan and I'm going to sew it right down the center of it, and there's what you're looking at. It's just a nice looking finished handle. But again, I'm gonna do all that with you. I'm just gonna step away for a second though, and I'll skive down those two sides so that when I come back, we can double-sided tape this thing down and all that. All right, so I ended up skiving off about 7/8 of an inch on either side of the center there, and I'll grab my double-sided tape, put it right here on the edges. And I'm just going to fold them over and sew them down. Well, fold them over and stick them down for now. And then once I put the other piece on it, we will sew it all down. You do want to make sure, though, that when you're folding it over, that you keep it nice and uniform, because it does have the tendency it can get wider and narrower, wider and more narrow as you go. Did a pretty good job there. Okay. All right, so there's what we have there, and see we've got this ugly seam right here, and that's what this is for. That sucker will lay across there real nicely, and we'll just sew down the two sides of it, and it'll be great. But I do need to wait on that to dry a little bit. I sprayed it with water so I could put my stamp on it. So we'll set that aside as we clip up our bottom part of our bag again. We do need to turn it back inside out. All right, all of our sewing is done on the inside out on these assembly of these bags. So now we know where the center is on the front of this, as where we made our mark earlier, and then obviously this is going to be the center of the back. So when we go to clip this thing together, we'll just put we'll do the bottom first, because the top has to include the handle. All right, so I will go ahead and clip both the front and back centers, and then work my way to the sides. Okay. So here we go. And once we got all this clipped, we're going to move over to the sewing machine and sew it together. Getting pretty close to being done with this little project. And these things can be customized so many ways. You can tool the handle like I did on the original one here. That's just a Don Gonzalez belt pattern that I shrunk down and made it small enough to put on a 1-inch wide handle. You can tool patches and put on the front of them. You could probably make this thing out of tooling leather if you're really good on your skiving game and you know, making it where you can turn it right side out and everything. So yeah, there's a lot of things you could do with one of these besides just making it plain. I don't think this one has it. No. Probably, I think it was the first one of these I made when I was working up the prototype for them. I just did a really nice patch with my Gorilla stamp on it and everything, and put it down in the corner, and it looked great. So, of course, I'm kind of biased, and I like the look of my Gorilla stamp. Alright, getting closer. Alright, we're all clipped up. We're going to go over to the sewing machine and sew that bottom piece on. And then we're going to finish up our handle and insert it in there before we clip up and sew on our top piece. So, one more pause and camera move, and we'll be back together. Alright, so here we are back at the sewing machine again. I'm just going to pick a random place and start, and it'll be right here. Why not? I don't like to start in the corner. I don't like to start in the center, so seeing as corners and centers are so close to each other, we'll just kind of split the difference. We'll start right there where that yellow clip was. And no, that was not the one off my hat. Alright, again, we don't need to, we don't have to backstitch here, but I am going to sew this sucker at least 1/4 inch in, almost 3/8. And we don't need to backstitch, we just need to start going. I'm going to check my bobbin right quick. Yeah, plenty of bobbin to finish this project. Alright, so here we go. Sewing around. Removing clips as we go. Starting to seem all too familiar, isn't it? Just kind of pressing to make sure that the French seam gets up under that presser foot good. But I am still holding it on the outside because I want to make sure that that bottom piece is still getting sewn to it and it didn't slide out from under it. That's what really stinks. I don't like to use tape or glue when I'm putting bags together, because if I am not careful with my seam, I could always, when I turn it right side out, I could see that tape or glue, and that's just the worst thing in my book. So since I don't do that, I have to be very careful. Since I don't glue them or tape them, I have to be very careful when I'm sewing them together that that bottom piece doesn't slide out from under me where I can't see it. The last video we did was the Madison bag, and it did slide out, so we got a little bit of a lesson on how to fix it. When it comes to the corners, they're going to be weird. That's all there is to it. Luckily, no matter how much I've fought a corner, it always seems to kind of work out. When I turn it right side out, it looked good. So, right on. Sorry, I know my hands are in the way, but I've got to press down on this pretty good to make sure I get around this corner here and don't sew a giant bubble into my leather where it wants to bunch up. Okay, almost to the straightaway for the front. We can speed up a little bit when we get there. Until we get to a clip, of course. Coming around to our last corner, so we're almost done with the bottom. Alright, make sure these are lining up good, and power through the last 2 inches here. Right back to our beginning seam. Alright, so now we're going to go, we'll finish the handle right quick. So all I'm going to do is tape the top part of that handle on, and then I'll bring it over here and sew it. That way we don't have to move back and forth, and then when we after that we'll go back to the gluing table and put the top on the bag. So give me a second to put the handle together. Alright, so again, I just used my double-sided tape and stuck it to the center of the handle there. It's still tiny. Normally I'd let it dry a lot longer, but I want to get this finished. So the reason I care about it drying, it doesn't affect the performance of the sewing machine. It'll leave more presser foot marks on the tooling leather if it's not completely good and dry. So here we go. This is my favorite kind of bag strap or handle to make. It's easy. It's a good way to tie in, you know, a different color of leather. And it looks real professional too. It looks really nice. I made my little boy's backpack for school this year, and I did his straps, his shoulder straps like this, and not only held up really nice, but it also makes a nice wide strap that, you know, is comfortable to wear and stuff too. For some reason, I've got me a little bit of a rat's nest here. Just not have pulled that all the way up. All right. This is going to be sewn down inside the bag, so I'm not worried about the ends of this. I'm actually going to trim it off probably an inch or two. So I'm not worried about the ends of it, and I'm not worried about back stitching it. There we go. So again, I left some little needle or track marks from the sewing machine on there, but that's fine. I'll try to rub those out later with my modeling spoon. But I wanted to get this video finished because I've got other stuff that needs to get done. So we'll pause the video. We'll go back to the gluing table. We're gonna insert the handle in with the top part when we put it all in, and we'll be back at the sewing machine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this right side out for a minute because we need to kind of figure out how long we want the handle. That's something I've struggled with on other kinds of bags when I've got just a little handle that I don't want it to stick up a bunch, but I also don't want it laying down on the project where it can't be easily picked up. So we're going to go ahead and turn this right side out so we can get a good guess at what we're doing here. Alright, so there's where we're at. Fold these corners so they'll be nice and straight. Okay, so we'll pretend this is the top when it's actually the bottom. And again, I'm just trying to figure out, okay, how long do I want to make my handle to where it sticks up just enough, but yet it's not laying flat and it's not all the way up here like a bucket handle. And looks like about here. All right, so I'm gonna just barely mark that leather with my fingernail on both ends. And that's really not a ton of overhang. I really didn't make this way too long. So what I'm gonna do is I will just, when I clip the top on, I will clip this into it where that would be right in the seam. And then after the sewing is complete, I will cut the ends of it off. So we'll turn this thing back right side out again. And we'll start putting the top together with the handle too. Now, we've preached this with all the bags that we've made. Before you start clipping the top on, make sure you unzip enough of it that you can get your hand in there to finish unzipping it. Because it's just one heck of a fun challenge. If you don't do that, it's a really fun challenge to try to get your hand in there to unzip it once it's completely sealed off and it's wrong side out or inside out. Now, the handle. We got to think of this as, again, being totally inside out. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to mark up. I'll put, okay, there's my front center mark and my back center. So I need to put a little mark at the side centers because we want the handle right there. We don't want it, you know, whomper-jawed and crooked on top of the project when this is all done. We want it centered. Okay, because this is not amateur hour, I don't think. Alright, so I'm going to take and I'm going to pay attention to where my little fingernail mark is, and I'm going to just kind of place that to where the sew line is going to be here, and that's where I will go ahead and place a clip for now, just to temporarily hold it in place while we get the top of it ready to put on. Okay, now we have to make sure that since we're doing this inside out, that the top of the handle is facing down in the bag. saw that mark right there, and I thought it was center, and I go to look at it, and I'm like, no, it's not. That is not the mark I made. Glad I paid attention. All right, now we'll go clip in the top of it as normal. We'll start with the centers in the front and the back and work our way around to the sides. And if you want, you can make a center mark on the sides so that you'll know they got centered on the handle as well. I'm going to try to kind of wing that. I'm sure I'll regret it later. So anyway, I'm going to pause this because you don't have to watch me for 5 minutes while I do the exact same thing I did on the other side of the bag. And when I come back, we'll be at the sewing machine already, and we'll get this sucker sewn together and turned right side out. Alright, so on this one I'm going to do a little bit different, and I'm going to start sewing right in the middle of one of these handles. Just so I know one end of it's nice and secure while I go around pushing this thing onto the machine. So, yeah. I'll grab my threads if I can find them. Had them once. Alright. So here we go. I'm just sewing around just like we did on the other, the bottom piece, but now we're on the top and we have the handles to work around. Again, we had to make sure we unzipped a little bit of this before we started sewing. You can get your hand in there and unzip it, but it's sure a lot easier just to do it before you sew it together. Alright, we're over here to the other corner and the other handle. So I'm going to be real careful to hold this handle in place since I've already removed one of the clips from it. And then when I get up to it sewing, let me just check and make sure all my layers are still good. When I get up to it sewing, I'm going to use my presser foot and my hand wheel together and make sure that the machine walks up on top of that handle okay. So there we go. Walked right over the top of it. Now we just sew across it. Alright, and then the rest of it's done just like the bottom was. We're just going to go all the way back around to where the other handle was, where we started. Alright, so we're back over here where the handle is. We're going around the last corner. Just going to make sure everything stays kind of lined up as we sew across it. Again, I need to work with my presser foot to lift it up over the level of the handle. Alright, so I'm going to pull this out of the machine. And I need to make sure on the inside here that all the, pieces got sewn together like they ought to, and everything looks fine. Okay, we'll meet back over there at the table, and we'll finish up. Okay, so I'm just going to take my my scissors wherever they disappeared to, and trim off any of my my threads that I have here. And I actually do need to find a real pair of scissors because I need to go around and kind of trim down the overhang of the pieces where they don't really match up too well from the sewing. So just trim it around just to clean it up some, top and bottom, and then also cut off the ends of my my handle. Here's the pair of scissors that I had earlier. So these are some of those good heavy-duty leather shears. And with the handle, I'm just going to clip it off, both sides. And then, like I said, the top doesn't look as bad as the bottom, as far as, wanting to trim some of this stuff off so it's a little more even and nice all the way around. Trimming it like this can also help in the corners. When you turn it right side out, the corners stand up better. You don't have to do this part, but it does look a lot cleaner in there when you look down into the bag. I did not trim up the French seam there. I don't want to disturb any of the ends of the stitches there because I don't want that one to come undone by any means. So, all right. So now we'll finish unzipping it. We'll turn the right side out here. Okay, and again, I'm going to fold all these seams down a little bit, and that way the bag will stand up a little bit better when it's zipped. And I'll do the same thing on the top, especially where this handle is. I'll fold that sucker down to a good 90 degrees or more, and then I'll fold all this in, and then in a second we'll zip it up and see how she sits. Alright, so with a little bit more molding and pressing in the corners, this thing's going to be pretty nice. So there she is. We have made our toiletry case here. Again, I'm going to make one of these pretty soon. I'm going to line the tops and bottom with wood and make it to where it holds tooling stamps and stuff like that. I think it'd be a neat project. So yeah. Alright, so as always, I'm Aaron Heiser, Makers Leather Supply. We really appreciate you watching this video. Again, this toiletry kit that we just made can only be found at Tandy Leather. We do not sell them in our store. So this video was made to help them out. And yeah, until the next time, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe if you like what you see, and have a great day.